The story of the Maccabean Revolt is one of resistance, faith, and the struggle for identity under foreign rule. Set against the backdrop of the ancient Seleucid Empire, this Jewish uprising in the 2nd century BCE not only shaped the course of Jewish history, but also left a lasting legacy that continues to inspire people of all backgrounds. Yet, the tale of the Maccabees, their revolt against the Seleucid Greeks, and the subsequent omission of their story from the Hebrew Bible is complex, laced with questions about memory, power, and the crafting of sacred texts. To begin understanding this saga, it is essential to travel back to Judea in the early 2nd century BCE. The region, once an independent kingdom, had long been caught in the cross-currents of empire. After the conquests of Alexander the Great, Judea fell under the sway of the Ptolemaic and then the Seleucid empires, both of which ruled vast territories extending from Egypt to Persia and beyond. These empires brought with them their own cultures, languages, and religions, resulting in an ever-present tension between local traditions and the demands of imperial authority. For the Jews of Judea, this tension became acute under the reign of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, the Seleucid king whose policies would spark the Maccabean Revolt. Antiochus IV, determined to unify his kingdom through Hellenization, imposed strict edicts that targeted the distinctive religious practices of the Jews. He forbade circumcision, outlawed the observance of the Sabbath, and desecrated the Second Temple in Jerusalem by introducing the worship of Greek deities. At the heart of these policies was an attempt to suppress Jewish identity and assimilate the population into the broader Hellenistic world. The response to these oppressive measures was not immediate or universal. Some Jews, particularly those in positions of power or influence, sought accommodation with the Seleucid authorities and even adopted elements of Greek culture. Others, however, viewed these changes as an existential threat to their way of life. Among the latter group was a rural priest named Mattathias and his 5 sons who lived in the village of Modine. According to the Book of Maccabees, when a royal official arrived in Modine to enforce the king's decree by demanding a public act of idol worship, Mattathias refused. In a moment of defiance, he killed the official and the Jew who was willing to comply, sparking the beginning of a full-scale revolt. The leadership of the revolt soon passed to Mattathias's son, Judas, who earned the nickname Maccabeus, or the Hammer, for his prowess in battle. Under his leadership, the rebels, who became known as the Maccabees or Hasmoneans, waged a determined guerrilla campaign against the far better equipped Seleucid forces. Driven by religious zeal and a desire to reclaim their ancestral traditions, the Maccabees achieved a series of improbable victories, culminating in the recapture of Jerusalem and the rededication of the temple in 164 BCE. This event is commemorated in the Jewish festival of Hanukkah, a celebration of light, resilience, and the enduring power of faith. Yet, for all its significance, the story of the Maccabees occupies a peculiar place in Jewish memory. The books of Maccabees, which chronicle these events in vivid detail, were ultimately excluded from the Hebrew Bible. They survive instead in the Christian Old Testament and in historical accounts, but not as part of the canonical Jewish scriptures. This omission has long puzzled scholars and laypeople alike, prompting questions about why such a formative episode was left out of the sacred texts. One common explanation centers on the political realities of the time. By the turn of the first millennium, Judea had once again fallen under foreign domination, this time by the Romans. In this context, stories that glorified armed revolt and the successful overthrow of imperial rule could be seen as dangerous, even subversive. Jewish leaders, seeking to safeguard their communities, may have judged it unwise to canonize texts that might inspire similar uprisings against Rome. Moreover, the Hasmonean dynasty that emerged from the Maccabean Revolt, though initially celebrated, became controversial over time, as later generations criticized its blending of religious and political authority. There are also theological reasons for the exclusion. The books of Maccabees, while rich in historical detail, do not contain the same kind of prophecy, divine revelation, or literary style found in other canonical Hebrew texts. Their focus on military exploits and political maneuvering set them apart from the prophetic and wisdom literature that forms the heart of the Tanakh. Some rabbis may have viewed the Hasmonean emphasis on political power as inconsistent with the spiritual ideals they wished to promote. Amidst these historical debates, there remains a persistent question about the diversity of those who participated in the revolt. In recent years, some have wondered whether Black Jews or Jews of African descent played a significant role in the struggle against the Seleucids. The historical record, however, provides little evidence for this claim. The Jewish population of Judea at the time was primarily Semitic in origin, and while the Seleucid Empire was indeed cosmopolitan, encompassing peoples from North Africa, the Levant, Persia, and beyond, there is no specific documentation of a distinct group of Black Jews leading or participating in the Maccabean Revolt. Nevertheless, the Jewish people have always been diverse, with communities established across Africa, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean. The story of the Maccabees, though centered in Judea, belongs to a broader tradition of Jewish resilience in the face of oppression. Turning back to the events of the revolt itself, the Maccabees' struggle was not only a military campaign, but also a cultural and spiritual battle. The Seleucid attempt to suppress Jewish religious life was experienced as a profound assault on identity. The imposition of pagan sacrifices in the temple, the banning of core rituals, and the threat of death for those who resisted constituted an existential crisis for the Jewish community. In this context, the actions of Mattathias and his sons were both a defense of tradition and a reassertion of autonomy. The resistance was marked by moments of intense violence and sacrifice. The Maccabees and their followers retreated to the hills, conducting hit-and-run attacks on Seleucid forces and those Jews who collaborated with the regime. The conflict was as much a civil war as a revolt against foreign rule, dividing communities and families. Yet despite their disadvantages, the Maccabees' intimate knowledge of the land, their use of guerrilla tactics, and their unwavering resolve enabled them to outmaneuver their adversaries. One of the most symbolic moments of the revolt came with the purification and rededication of the temple. After years of desecration, the Maccabees re-entered Jerusalem, cleansed the sanctuary, and lit the menorah, the sacred candelabrum. According to later tradition, only enough ritually pure oil was found to last for 1 day, but miraculously, it burned for 8 days, long enough to prepare a new supply. This miracle is at the heart of Hanukkah, a festival that celebrates the triumph of light over darkness and the endurance of hope against overwhelming odds. In the aftermath of the revolt, the Hasmonean dynasty established itself as the ruling power in Judea, inaugurating a period of relative independence that lasted for about a century. This era saw the expansion of Jewish territory, the fortification of Jerusalem, and the consolidation of religious authority. Yet it was also a time of internal conflict, as the Hasmoneans navigated the challenges of governing a diverse population and balancing the demands of tradition with the realities of statecraft. Over time, the memory of the Maccabees was reshaped by subsequent generations. For some, they were national heroes, champions of faith and freedom. For others, the later Hasmoneans' embrace of monarchy and their sometimes ruthless policies cast a shadow over their legacy. The debates about the canonization of their story reflect these ambivalences, a tension between the celebration of resistance and the caution born of living under powerful empires. The question of why the books of Maccabees were omitted from the Hebrew Bible is thus not merely a matter of religious doctrine, but also of historical circumstance and communal self-understanding. In the centuries following the destruction of the Second Temple by the Romans, Jewish leaders faced the daunting task of preserving their identity in exile. In this context, texts that emphasized spiritual endurance, ethical conduct, and the hope for eventual redemption took precedence over stories glorifying military revolt. The canonization process was, in part, an exercise in shaping a collective narrative suited to the challenges of diaspora life. It is important to recognize, however, that the exclusion of the books of Maccabees from the Hebrew Bible did not mean the erasure of their story from Jewish consciousness. The festival of Hanukkah, with its rituals and storytelling, ensured that the memory of the revolt endured. In later centuries, especially in times of persecution or renewed struggle for autonomy, the example of the Maccabees provided inspiration for new generations. Their story was retold not only in religious settings, but also in literature, art, and political discourse. The question of Black Jews and their role in the Maccabean Revolt is emblematic of a broader interest in the diversity of Jewish history. While there is no direct historical evidence for the involvement of Black Jews in the revolt itself, the Jewish people have always encompassed a wide range of backgrounds and experiences. Communities such as the Beta Israel of Ethiopia and other Jewish groups in Africa have their own rich histories of resilience and adaptation. The story of the Maccabees, though rooted in the specific context of Judea, resonates with all who have faced oppression and struggled to preserve their traditions. In recent decades, there has been a renewed interest in recovering the voices and experiences of marginalized groups within Jewish history. This includes efforts to document the lives of Jews in Africa, Asia, and the Americas, as well as to explore the intersections of race, ethnicity, and religion. The Maccabean Revolt, with its themes of identity, resistance, and communal survival, provides a powerful lens through which to examine these questions. The legacy of the Maccabees is thus both particular and universal. It is the story of a small group of rebels who defied a mighty empire, reclaimed their sacred space, and restored their way of life. It is also a story about the shaping of memory, the politics of canonization, and the ongoing struggle to define who belongs within the boundaries of tradition. Whether their exploits are celebrated in scripture, ritual, or popular culture, the Maccabees continue to inspire those who seek to affirm their identity in the face of adversity. As we reflect on their story, it is worth considering the ways in which history is remembered, forgotten, or transformed. The omission of the books of Maccabees from the Hebrew Bible was not merely an act of exclusion, but also a statement about the kind of legacy that future generations would inherit. In choosing to prioritize texts that emphasize spiritual endurance over military victory, the rabbis who shaped the canon were making a profound statement about the values they wished to transmit. Yet the persistence of Hanukkah and the enduring fascination with the Maccabees attest to the power of memory to transcend the boundaries of official texts. In the end, the story of the Maccabean Revolt is a reminder that history is always contested terrain. The narratives we inherit are shaped by the choices of those who came before us, but they are also open to reinterpretation and renewal. Whether told as a tale of national liberation, a celebration of faith, or a meditation on the complexities of communal identity, the saga of the Maccabees remains a source of inspiration and debate. For those seeking to understand the full richness of Jewish history, it is important to look beyond the boundaries of the canonical texts and to embrace the diversity of voices and experiences that have shaped the tradition. The revolt against the Seleucids, the rededication of the temple, and the ongoing debates about memory and identity are all part of a larger story, a story that continues to unfold with each new generation. In conclusion, the Maccabean Revolt stands as a testament to the power of faith, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring struggle for autonomy and identity. Its legacy, though complicated by questions of canonization and the complexities of memory, continues to resonate across time and space. Whether celebrated in the flickering lights of Hanukkah candles or pondered in the pages of history, the story of the Maccabees invites us to reflect on the meaning of freedom, the cost of resistance, and the ways in which we remember our past. And if you're still here, maybe your soul just got touched in the deepest place. At Tales of Black, every story is a ritual, a reminder that some memories are not written in books, but in bone and blood. If this story stirred something in you, share it with someone still wondering. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. And if there's a legend, a memory, or a haunting you want told, leave it in the comments. Maybe your story is the next one summoned in the ritual.